right, hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of your heart dissection. This time we're cutting into the heart. I already cut into the heart, and what you're supposed to do eventually is that you're supposed to cut into the right ventricle and into the left ventricle, and what we're going to see is the tricuspid and the bicuspid, and then eventually looking at those semilunar valves. We're also going to be able to see the septum and the chordae tendineae in this dissection. So you can always start again with orientating yourself with the heart. I made this cut already, so this it's a little lopsided now, but here we can see that coronary artery on the front. We actually have our left atrium. This one's right atrium totally got cut off. We can see those two major blood vessels at the top. We know the one in the front that goes into the right ventricle, that's our pulmonary artery, and the one behind that is the aorta. I cut the aorta so that we can see the aortic semilunar valves in there. All right, so when I cut on the right side, I wanted to keep this together for you. So we're cutting down into the right side, and we see all this stringy stuff in here, okay? I feel like on the left side you can see those chordae tendineae very well, but those stringy things that are hanging on to the walls of the heart, those are your chordae tendineae. So you can kind of see them down here. You see that those strings, those are your heart strings or your chordae tendineae. These are super cool. So when you look at the AV valves, or those atrioventricular valves, this is on the right side. And when we look in here, if I can hold this all together here, we can see there's my finger under one. Here's my finger under another one. And here's my, if I can get over there, we can see that third one over here. We know on the right side that there are those 1, 2, 3 AV valves, and that's why we call that the tricuspid. And so eventually these, one of the questions on your lab is, what do they look like? I always say they look like little parachutes, and that's kind of what they are, because these parachutes eventually parachute out and they close together to hold that blood down in the ventricle, so when the ventricle pumps, it doesn't come back up into the atrium, because that's the whole function of these valves, is to make sure that blood is flowing in one direction. But on this right side, we see the 1, 2, 3 AV valves. That's why we call it tri for 3, tricuspid valve on the right side. Okay, if we can look down into the heart, we'll see that there's this major part of the heart here. This is what we're looking at there. This is part of the septum. I didn't totally take off one part of the heart to see the septum, but this is separating this left ventricle and this right ventricle in the end, and that's the septum. Okay, if we go over to the left side and we open this up, here, this one I feel like, if we can get in this with the picture, there you go. Now I think this side, I must have cut too many of the chordae tendineae on the right side, but you can really see those strings on there, that chordae tendineae that's holding those valves on here. Here we can see one of those valves right there that my finger is showing through, kind of like a parachute held on by these strings. Some other people say it's kind of like a web. I don't know what you think it is, but they're very thin valves in the end. So the difference, and we could see the difference, or the difference, is that on the left side, we only have 2 AV valves, and that's why we call that the bicuspid. So here's one, I already showed, I kind of cut this one apart, so half of it's on this side and half of it's on this side, but you have one AV valve here, and then the one that I cut, when I cut this here, this one's the bicuspid, and this, you can kind of see really nicely how those AV valves close and cover that up so that blood cannot go back into the atrium on there. So, looking at that again, you have the right side that had the 3 AV valves called the tricuspid. Or wait, did I say right side? I hope I did. The right side that has the 3 with the tricuspid, and then the left side that has the 2, or we call that the bicuspid, and that super cool chordae tendineae, which you can see in there. See all those different chords in there. Those are the chordae tendineae holding those AV valves to the heart wall in the end. One thing before we do this last semilunar valve that I want to show you is that you can see the thickness of the ventricle. So when we're looking at the thickness of the ventricle, that's how thick the ventricle is. It's like the meaty, muscular part, the actual discharging chambers that pump blood out of the heart through either the pulmonary artery or the aorta. And then when you look at that compared to these atria, which are these little flappy things on here again, remember, is that when I put my finger in here, you can see my finger in there. These atrium are incredibly thin. And that's one question on your lab that you're supposed to answer is, what is the difference between the atrium and the ventricle? Excuse me. And a lot of people say, well, the atrium are so much smaller. Very true. They're very small and flappy-like, but the actual atrium are incredibly thin, because all they do is they receive that blood that's coming in, and then they let that go down into the ventricle. All right, so the last thing that we needed to see were the semilunar valves. All valves have the same function. The function is to prevent backflow. So I cut into the aorta so that we can see those semilunar valves, and here you see one right here. So they're called semilunar. You can see that they're a half a circle shape. So it's a half circle shape, semi-partial lunar moon. So a partial moon, crescent moon, if you want to say that, shape is a semilunar valve. You can see that there are multiple. Here's another one. Oh, shoot, sorry, I'm off the camera. Here's another one, and there's actually another one over there. So those three go, and they balloon out and touch, and are going to catch any blood that's getting pushed out from our left ventricle going out the aorta. If any were going to fall back in, those semilunar valves open, catch that blood in that nice semilunar shape, and then prevent it from going back into the left ventricle, so we can get blood flowing in one direction, have a very efficient heart. Another just kind of fun fact for you is that people can have valve problems, and if they have valve problems, actually one thing that doctors can do is take valves from pig hearts or cow hearts and replace those in humans. But because our valves are very, very much similar, and when you're talking about this pig heart, the size of the heart is very similar to the size of your heart. All right, that is it for the internal dissection of your heart. If you guys have any questions, please make sure you contact me. If you need to Zoom, I can put a heart on there and we can look through that again if you're having any problems with that. But just let me know, because I'd have to thaw out a heart so I could dissect one again. All right, hope all is well. Watch this video as many times as you need to, and please enjoy, because it's, I feel like, highly interesting. All right, have a great day. Bye.